How I judge. How's it going, everybody? It's Man Tomorrow here. Yeah, I mean, conversation on Brother X channel. It's interesting, but one side doesn't have to discuss policy at all. That's not what they're about. That's not what their news stations are about. It isn't. And the other side have to discuss policy because they're trying to get stuff to actually change, which isn't that big of a deal. But things don't get fixed within the society because people don't want change at all. And this is why it's easy to do the trolling thing, the actual culture warrior thing, because that's easy. And to keep in mind, I mean, most of this stuff is about not really doing what you're supposed to do anyway. Like American politics is probably one of the easiest systems to be involved in, to be quite honest with you. There's not that many issues. The sides are pretty well thought out. The history is pretty congruent. But when you got people who specifically are acculturated and resistant to participating within the environment, that's how they end up listening to people who actually fall in toward their preconceived biases when it comes to actual one side or the next. To me, politics are about policy. That's it. There's a policy. And most fake conservatives, especially in this space, they all have the same talking points. It's either they're pointing at what the quote unquote left is doing. Like they never talk about what their side is actually doing. They never do that. They never do that, by the way. They can't do it because paying attention to the side that they're actually on, you actually have to be invested in the side that you're actually on. For instance, the Supreme Court, the 6-3 conservative Supreme Court, just gutted what was left of the Voting Rights Act. Why do we need a Voting Rights Act in the first place, you ask? It's because those southern states, the ones who murdered people for signing up people to vote, yes. And all these shenanigans that come in with all these things when it comes to actually voting, yeah, they keep repeatedly doing those type of things in society, man. And it's a problem overall, for the most part. And so this is why you have to understand. Once you understand your place and your part in this stuff, the only thing that comes at that particular point in time is nothing but upkeep and just keeping up with current events and know how the current events fit into who benefits from what. Like, this isn't hard. Like, there's a lot of people who actually need to believe, to think that they're actually more superior than other people. That's what AM talk radio is about. It's about serenading people who really don't care about the outcome of anything, just as long as the status quo stay in place. And that isn't something that you can continuously do. Like at some certain point, maintaining the status quo would make everybody within an environment dangerous to everybody around them. Because you can't maintain ignorance as a concept. You can't maintain the fact that people don't vote in a system, not involved in a system. You can't maintain that. Or you can maintain it the same way that the Arkansas side of that I-40 bridge tried to maintain it, by letting everybody else work on their side of the bridge except them. Then all of a sudden, their side of the bridge has to close down. Why did they maintain their side of the bridge? Even though they got in all that federal money, they never maintained their side of the bridge. Same thing about Kentucky. What is it? I-71, I-75, same thing. You got to take the 471 all the way around because why? Kentucky didn't maintain their side of the bridge. And if you go to these places that don't have capital investment in their people, like Mississippi, for instance. Mississippi isn't bad because whites run the show. Mississippi is bad because people who don't want to invest in the people within the state is running the show. And if those people who are dug out in their specific so-called spaces within that space would get out of their space and go to the other side and realize things are just as messed up on the other side, and that no one is actually winning this thing on either side. That's the problem. No capital investment, which means no corporate office is going to move there, because they're going to want infrastructure and all those types of things. This is what capital investment gets you. But everybody who seems to be conservative always live in liberal areas. They don't ever live in conservative areas. They're always in these liberal ass states around all this liberal shit. It's called Smooth, Ref Ron, Keldeus, Carl Todak. But see, understanding how this system works is easy. Showing up to people who don't know what the hell they're actually talking about is hard. Ignorance around politics is a very expensive maneuver. It takes a lot to upkeep that ignorance when it comes to politics. Why? You have to tune into your go-to guy for your high to disconnect you from the system. That actually can do you some good if you actually took advantage of it. Oh, I'm not even going to go into that, Kill Dizzy. I'm not even going to do that, because that's too easy. Most of these dudes are plantation dudes. I actually don't have any respect for dudes who talk about getting together with this fucking counterpart. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. Like, conservative men don't want to be around liberal women for real. They don't want that shit. They don't. My grandfather was a conservative dude. He didn't want to be around that stuff at all. He didn't want to be around disorder at all, dysfunction at all. But it isn't part and parcel of the package. It's just something that people choose. If people choose something that benefits them at the expense of everybody else within the environment, and they get no punishment for it, then you're going to look forward to seeing more of that. What's going on, Mike B? That's how that works. You incentivize the stuff you want to see. You tax the stuff you don't want to see. That's the overall principle of it. But then there's a level of individual choice involved, whether to invest within a system or not to get a certain level of return. So if you have people who say the following, and it's very easy. There should be, I mean, like words like this should immediately get you kicked off of panels. If you say something like, well, what have they done for us? They should kick you off the panel. You don't deserve to be part of a political discussion. If you say something like, well, we've been voting for 50 years and we ain't been getting nothing, you should be kicked off the panel. There's no room for people with no investment into the conversation, but yet trying to have the conversation anyway, as if they are invested in the actual outcome. You can't just be invested in the benefit. You got to put something in to get something out. I know people are accustomed to getting something out without putting something in. But that's not how life works. And you have to understand that not being able to follow a simplistic process will mess up your entire life. Period. There ain't no way you got all this stuff under control, but you can't follow simple directions, simple input, output, simple history of things outside of entertainment. These things are easy. For the most part, you don't see Latinos out here engaging in the culture war. For the most part, you don't see the Asians out here engaging in a culture war. Why? They understand how the system works and they benefit from it at the expense of the people who don't understand how the system works. But it's not a simple misunderstanding. They, on purpose, deliberately not understand what the system is about. Doesn't matter how platform, how big or even how small it is. Why is it that you cannot keep up with the things that are happening within the environment? How hard is that? There are channels literally dedicated to doing that. Yeah, like none of this stuff is hard. I mean, how I judge them is very easy. Do you know the history of the country? Yes. Okay, fine. What side are you on? I'm on this side right here. Okay, fine. What are you organizing on the side that you're actually on? They actually don't need you even organizing over there. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to bring something to the people who's representing where you are. I am where I am because of policy. It works well for me. We all know how Lyman, Colorado looks. We all know how Grand Junction looks. Still pretty, but it's not the Denver metro area. We know how Rifle, Colorado looks. We do know how Colorado Springs would look if it wasn't for the military industrial complex. We know how Pueblo looks. Yeah, you have all that yada yada freedom and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, when people say dumb shit like, oh, they're coming to take my guns, you don't deserve a gun. If you think you have to be armed up so that way you can stop the government, what are they going to sell within this country that you're going to be able to stop a Patriot missile? What are they going to be able to sell within this country that's going to be able to stop an F-18 strike on your house? What are they going to be able to sell that's going to have you stopping an ICBM from destroying your entire community if you become too big of a threat? A lot of people think that they were given weapons so that way they can overthrow the government the moment that they get mad at the government. That's not what it's for. They don't even understand basic sentence structure when it comes to things. And this is why I don't take people seriously when it comes to certain things. These things are not rights. These things are privileges. And privileges have actual limitations on it. For instance, You have a driver's license. It is a license. You go out there and get a DUI, guess what? That license is going to be taken from you for a period of time. In order for you to gain the privilege of driving back, you're going to have a SR22 or some high-ass insurance to once again engage in the privilege of driving. Not hard, but see, people assign themselves more rights with the misunderstanding of rights. And like I said, falling or letting any of this culture warrior stuff come out of your mouth just because it's being said everywhere, it makes you look dumb. It doesn't make you look involved. It makes you look like you're not even interested or invested in the situation enough to actually even learn about what the issues are. Because if you learn what the issues are, you would know that that's nonsense coming out of their mouths. It's not even that hard. There's really no need to talk about, oh, well, only 0.02% of people get killed by police. I'm like, yeah. And 0.6 percentages to the 0.1 percentages of planes crash. But when it crashes, nationwide news, isn't it? And there's an investigation. And guess what? There are changes. And sometimes, depending on the country, definitely not America, there's jail time involved if there's negligence. Small suspect, Glorious One, Seed, Lil Rock, Mike B. So it's like most of this stuff is based on processes. And you could tell a black conservative or liberal itself about what their ideal end of society looks like. What does it look like and how do you get there? Because if you don't have an end goal, when it comes to actual politics itself, this is why you had people fly by night, call themselves how much they care about certain groups of people, and it turns out they can't even talk about the issues. Why? They can't tie it back to the culture war. They only discuss issues if they could tie it back to the culture war. This is why you have the culture warriors discuss the same thing. First of all, they don't even talk about what side they're on, let alone what their side is doing. Because if your side is doing shit, you would actually just be on that side where they're over there doing stuff. Yeah, there's an outcome here. There is organizing, there is putting ballot initiatives and measures together, and then there's outputs. Marijuana legalization started off in Colorado as a ballot initiative. They didn't come to black communities to get black people to sign them forms before they turned those signatures into the actual house. No, they went to their own communities to get people to sign those signatures because it's a certain amount of signatures based on what municipality that you're in. You turn it in and then it turned to a ballot initiative. And that's how we got medicinal marijuana on the actual ballot, and it passed. And then all of a sudden, the legalization shortly after that became legal. That's how it is. But see, you can do that for everything. You can actually do that for child support. But you can't get men organized to do stuff correctly. The system is not difficult. Strong Charles. Strong JR. But this system is meant and specific to be played a specific and certain way. Most of these politicians, you don't realize, is sell out for $30,000 to $40,000 checks from corporate America. Most people in small towns could easily give that kind of money to their own politician to do their own deed, but they don't. because they expect an improper level of benefit from an improper level of investment. You would not want a doctor working on you who didn't complete the process of becoming a physician. You wouldn't want any type of care from an individual like that. You wouldn't. I know you wouldn't. So why get behind people who don't know what they're talking about when it comes to issues? You should have an end goal to what you're actually doing. So that way you can make sure you're on track with what you're doing. But you know you've done something wrong the moment you're talking about the LGBT community who got way more power than you because they're all invested as 1% of the group, while there's zero investment within the 7 or 8% of the other group who aren't doing anything on the other side. You know you're doing it wrong when you're talking about, oh, they're coming to get my guns. That's when you've lost your mind. You know you've lost when the only thing that you got is trolling, quote unquote, the left. That's when you know you lost. You know you lost when you have this fake ass level of patriotism that seem to be so one sided and tend to be around hoisting up traitors while getting rid of equal protection under the law. So that way you can feel comfortable with your own biases. That's when you know you lost. And you also know you lost when you don't give a shit about due process, which is a very simple concept. When you don't want police to be professional at work. You know you lost. It's not hard to judge these people. The only thing you have to do is watch and wait for their end goal. Do you thrive off the environment by everybody being lost? Do you thrive off of the environment by pumping out tons of wrong propaganda that you expect people to clean up after you by? We made it too easy for ignorant ass people to get along easily within this environment. So much so that nobody really trusts experts. They're looking for comfort first and then discussing issues second. That isn't how things work. Don't worry. I judge white conservatives and Latino conservatives along the same path because it's very easy. Are you discussing policy? What is your actual idea about policy? It's like the non-existent voter thing when the Supreme Court just overturned nearly all of the voting rights legislation, especially for the Voting Rights Act. Not that they're trying to make things more convenient for people to participate in the process. They don't want people participating in the process because they don't benefit from people participating in the process at all. So what they do is they try to pump out as much propaganda as possible to, to deliberately leave the people confused. This is why the people who sell you comfort and bullshit ain't supposed to be the people who's talking about politics and policy. Politics and policy work within the real world. Comfort and bullshit works among people who can't live in the real world. It's not hard to judge them by where they are at. Because if you're not going to read the policies anyway, then what's the discussion about? If you simply cannot turn on C-SPAN 1, 2, or 3, or keep up with most of the political publications within the country, and don't call yourself a fucking libertarian because you don't want to pay no taxes, I don't even pay attention to people like that. I really don't pay attention to people who don't understand tax policy. There's nothing like a dude who makes under $1 million a year talking about how tax cuts grow the economy. There's nothing like that type of ignorance. Nothing like it. But I tell you this, if I were to take all their money away and just give them tax cuts, they would clearly understand that tax cuts alone don't grow anything. If somebody fired you from your job and gave you quote unquote tax cuts on top of it, you would know that that's not a level of bringing additional revenue within your house. You see, they understand it on a household basis, but somehow they think there's a potential windfall by allowing others to disrupt the process of paying for taxes because they don't understand taxation at all. That's the problem. Like, dude, these things are too easy to solve. And in other countries, they don't have this level of ignorance when it comes to their own history, their own policies. You don't even need to be majority homogenous in order to get these things. You really don't need that. Trust me, I was there too. I didn't know what the hell I was talking about when it was coming to these things for a long ass time. And most of the time it was once I got out of the military. Highly conservative environment. You can't really ask any questions to anybody. You see all this anti-black trolling bullshit everywhere? Yeah. Then all of a sudden, you see the real world. And you realize that these people were never on your side. They were just tolerating your presence. Because they knew you didn't know shit about policy if you hung around them. Again, fake ass patriotism, not requesting professionals to be professional at work. There's no civics classes around here. And since these things are really not taught in school, you come out in society with your preconceived biases and you think all this bullshit is wrong. I can't remember how many times I call people cowards because they keep thinking that people on welfare are fucking lazy. I'm like, what about corporations? Oh, well, they do work. Like, shut your coward ass up, man. Just be quiet. But a lot of people just don't understand how this system actually works. They're more invested in making damn certain and sure that they keep themselves disconnected just enough so that way they can just claim victory. They want to claim victory without involvement in the process itself, and that's what normally happens here. That's wrong. And you can't tell me that you got everything else in society working well, but you don't understand this basic level of operation within the environment itself. I don't buy that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if black conservatives even believe that, to be quite honest with you. I don't know. The black conservatives I know, they can't wait to talk about policy. They have no time to talk about liberal women or all this trolling shit. They don't give a fuck about that. They never cared about that. How does this affect my bottom line? Pretty noble thing. But self-interest is not conservative. Self-interest is a human process. A lot of people think that, well, I'm just in it for me, or another thing that you hear from these people. I'm on the side that give me the most things. All right. What side are you on? None. So you just waiting on people to pander to you so that way you can get involved in the process after you benefit. I'm like, man, that's some whole shit. Man, like nothing really works like that. That's why I'm having this conversation, Ken Dog, because a lot of people don't understand these people when they're talking to them. Most of these people, most of them. It's too easy to talk about the policies. There's no way you can have a competent conversation about tax cut. You can't. You can't have a conversation about immigration without punishing corporations and forcing them to use the I-9 system. These issues are too easy. And the people who talk the least as a group are the people who benefit the most as a group. Keep in mind, those people are not out there marching for anything. They get their needs and their wills met. Why? They play the game the way it's supposed to be played. And they're not discussing their actual ideas in the wide open so people can see them coming. So you have to understand this. At this point, what's going on, AO? The people who talk about coming together are those people who you should leave out of all conversations. Because the people who are still trying to find ways for the domestic counterpart to get on, they're having their moment right now. But they're going to be just like those guys who sold heroin, just like those guys who sold crack, just like those guys who thought they can get by selling weed, just like those guys who were selling pills or meth or anything else. The moment they run out on that skill, they're going to be trying to find cover in your organization. And you know damn well they didn't do what they were supposed to do then, and they're not going to do what they're supposed to do now if you ever gave them another chance or opportunity. Because taking advantage of opportunity is also a process and a mindset that nobody is going to teach you. Plan, level of investment, outcome. It's not hard. Well, that's not true. I mean, you can actually, they have to take the approach with climate change like they took the approach with actual cigarette companies saying that their product didn't cause cancer. They just threatened to lock them up. Lock them up. If you're taking money from an industry and you come out here pushing some bullshit ass narrative, that has nothing to do with free speech. That has everything to do with a paid position that's going to cause death and harm to people. I don't remember Obama or Clinton pulling out of the summits when it came to climate change. I don't recall anybody on the Democratic side of the aisle pushing nonsense about climate denial science. I don't recall them making it a cultural issue. And that heat dome on the west, if there's any indication of what's coming in the future, 120, 10, 20 degrees in the west coast. We're not even talking California. I don't think so, man. I don't even think the mass beer that big. I don't think so. I really don't. Yeah, he did. He did. I don't think even Bush even went that far. But yeah, he actually did. Straight shooter. But discussing and solving these things is a great deal. Like you have to understand that the longer you don't sit people down and have them talk about policy, the more time there is to do this culture warrior grifting nonsense. You can't call yourself a conservative and you're preoccupied with liberal women. There ain't no true conservative who's caught up in that. Real black conservatives are not trying to make a business off complaining about a person who's not viable. If a person is not viable, then you avoid them. But I can understand why they don't avoid them. And it makes a lot of sense if you look at it from their point of view. If you cannot do any better than what is disrespecting you, then it makes a lot of sense for you not to be able to move forward as a human being unless the woman get her shit straight. Because since she's so much better than you on average, you actually need her to lead you to the promised land, wherever that promised land is. Because I get the people who are on the left when it comes to these women. They're trying to get these people taken care of, which they're not. They're just trying to sell to the actual counterpart that there's no consequences for her past actions because they're going to bring all the productive guys back to the table because we know how we starve these dudes out. That type of system. So, like, but that's where we are. Politics isn't hard. It's very particular and it's very specific. When you hear people talking about politics and they are actually on a side and they're not talking about the policies that make up their side, you have to ask yourself, what is all the talk about? Nathan Theodore Francis. I don't think I've seen you here before. What's going on? Straight shooter. I think the talk about women is that most of these dudes, and it's not a bad thing because you're not supposed to have access to this. Oh, sure. Lawrence guy, hey, I get you, man. There ain't no way I'm playing by that. I mean, they focus on it because it's easy. And you have to understand that most men, especially black ones, they don't have any creativity when it comes to things. So everybody ends up trying to do a horrific job of whatever else is out there. That's why there's no real progression amongst the group because everybody's trying to sell a hustle. That's what everybody's trying to do. Everybody's trying to sell the actual hustle and the fact that they can get a lot out of a space that they don't put anything into. And it does work for some people. But most of these people here are here to talk to women. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's just where the direction have gone. You know, it was time to act, and all of a sudden there was a spin cycle of turning back around and doing nothing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm part of his Discord server too. I don't go over there all that much anymore. But yeah, and he will kick your ass out of there in a heartbeat if you ain't on top of what you supposed to be there for. I mean, but it's a deliberate misunderstanding of Volcel and Incel, man. They want to bait you into a bad situation. They want to sell you a ticket to their private hell. That's all it is. So it's easy to judge these people, man. Because if you notice, any of the right wing guys that you see, especially the foreign policy professors, especially the conservative ones, they're extremely smart guys when it comes to policy on a specific country. Incredibly sharp dudes. You don't see these dudes anywhere near these culture warriors. Yeah. Yeah, it is an actual endpoint of it. But that's what we are, man. These things are easy. These platforms are easy to look at. It's on websites. They tell you what they're going to do or what they intend to do. And you have to be able to sift through the actual feel goodery and what's actual tangibles that they're actually going to fight for when they get in office. Because everybody says, you know, the same bullshit about, oh, I want to spend more money on education. Okay, everybody wants better education, but if you're not going to do it properly, then what's the point? No, they don't, man. They didn't. Because a lot of these people, Tay, like, especially in these bigger cities, there's no reason for them dudes to be lost like that. Those people got access to schools and unions and all kinds of other stuff, and the school don't even tell them about it. Their parents don't even tell them about it. The only way most of the time they realize that stuff is that they run into somebody who actually talk about it or know what they're doing. They're not even socialized into it as a culture. Me personally, I think that's to keep the school packed with kids that don't need to be there, but that's neither here nor there. But that's where we're at, man. I don't have a problem with you being a Republican. I do have a problem with you being an actual Republican without talking about policy. Because it should be pretty easy to talk about the policy. That's what politics are about. Politics is not about the culture war, it's about the policies. I know the culture war is what they end up getting sucked into. These things are quite practical, quite easy. Everybody can exercise this. Everybody can look at this. Yeah, man. Don't worry. Especially as a younger guy, just wait till you start getting those certifications and you're gonna walk into those environments. Hold on for a minute. Yeah, but that's just where we are, man. You have Ocean 10, yeah, I highly recommend that. Yeah. And it's crazy, like a lot of these southern workforce centers, man, like they got people who are OSHA trained, man. They don't even make the most out of their people within the environment that is even there. That's crazy. This is why I say, man, we got to rethink education for real. Because we teach a hell of a lot of shit in school that don't need to be taught anymore, and not nearly the stuff in school that do need to be taught. Oh, sure. Those dudes had outcomes waiting on people. Eisenhower and Teddy had outcomes. They had a place where they wanted to get people to. The entire damn country. They had outcomes they wanted to move people to. Yeah, Kendall. Like I don't like this test taking center shit, man. I think it kind of dilutes the actual experience about education. Like I've been to other places, and their education is nothing like we have over here. And the policies are important. Like you don't have time to be wasting tons of time trying to figure out people trying to lead you away from the fact that they're not doing anything. That's what the finger pointing is about. The finger pointing and the live streams are about resource extraction. It's not about building on something and making shit better and fixing things so that way you don't need to go back to discussing the bullshit over and over again. That's how my first college tech school was, man. A lot of hands on. Nah, it's not even trying to. It's trying to create people to graduate from school. It's not trying to create people to run the goddamn world. That's something that people have to pick up on their own. But that's what happens when you don't have a national plan or trying to push people towards something that's better than what's actually out there. All right, well, it don't look like he ain't gonna come up. So, all right, man. I just wanted to talk to y'all about this. I'll take this down, put this on Patreon. I want to thank y'all for coming through and liking the video and coming through. I normally don't even go on this late, but there's a lot of things that was said on Prophet of Thought series channel with TVA that need to be fleshed out because you can have this problem on both sides, but it's very easy to see what's going on where and where it isn't going on. All you have to do is look at the outcomes and the discussion of the actual policies within the environment itself and how it affects you, the person. Hold on a second. I didn't get what you meant with the false cell incel thing. Yeah, like once you start talking to people who you think are incels, like these dudes are just not preoccupied with loose fucking women. They're just dudes who are just not interested in what's here. If you gave them better options, they would deal with the better options. But sometimes you're just not acculturated to wanting to compete for what's here. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of these people who actually sold their lives out and facing the consequences of actually dealing with this counterpart within the environment itself, those are the people who actually is trying to bait those people into learn nonsense in order to deal with people that they shouldn't be dealing with in the first place. Yeah, you still got some background noise, nigga.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, man. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you were still talking, but go ahead, make your point because I kind of want to chime in.
You already did.
Oh, you already? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just listening to this so-called conservative stuff, and it's kind of scary to see us sitting up in here talking crazy, not understanding any aspects of anything about policy, and looking at how that has affected your whole community. You cannot talk about any of this stuff without dealing from a policy perspective. And these people here are just talking insane. I don't, I don't know if you've covered that already. I don't know if you've covered all that yet, but this is just, this is amazing. And the amount of ignorance that we have with respect to this is frightening. And, politically, how are you going to move forward without addressing or dealing with these issues? How are you going to do that?
No, I mean, but a lot of people understand the amount of power that they have in spreading misinformation. Like, this whole space has become the den of misinformation for real. Like a lot of people think that having discontent with a counterpart and waiting for us to come back to the table is the only thing you need to be a damn conservative. It's just crazy.
People talk about conservative principles. I don't hear them speaking about it at all. I saw one person in the chat room who was trying to have a conversation with me, and I looked at him and said, "Listen, don't talk to me. I kind of don't really have a lot of regard for your opinions because you've nothing. Go to the RNC 1964 with Barry Goldwater and just take a listen to what these guys outlined and then put your talking points into that and see how that kind of matches up with today. And are you a real conservative? Let's talk about that." And these guys cannot speak on it from that perspective. We cover that many times, as you know, in the how would I say, in the with the Black Brain Trust and so forth. You've covered that many times on your channel as well. And these guys still can't speak from that, but yet call themselves conservatives.
Yeah,
And
but I just think that I don't think conservatism can truly work without equal protection under the law. To be quite honest,
it cannot. And that's what these guys were speaking about. Once you vacated that, once you vacated, your Fourth Amendment and so forth, once you've moved away from from these areas, how are you even going to call yourself a constitutional conservative? Because that's what these guys were really running on and talking about. And then saying that if we didn't get that equal protection, if we didn't get what was right for us, you almost had a right to go against the system violently in order to see that you did get that. But see, these guys don't understand this. And Goldwater came out there and made that statement. It was revolutionary in certain respects, or almost. Or people looked at that and said that this was not revolutionary, but militant, and was looked upon in some ways, wow, man, is this radical conservatism saying that if they're not treated equally and you don't have equal protection and you're not properly you have the equal rights and you have the equal ability to express yourself in any which way you can here in this society and culture, besides being violent. and the government gets in the way to stop you from doing that, that you are going to take up arms against the government potentially. I mean, that's where these guys are really coming from. The black conservative, when you come from the black conservative perspective, they have the same views, same stuff. But if you don't understand conservatism, if you don't understand this stuff, you can't speak about it. And these guys sit here and want to say, "Oh, it's all a bunch of dumb niggers." It's when these guys don't know. It's unbelievable. Go ahead.
It's pretty much what Lawrence guy have on the screen there. Like the idea of what people think conservatism is, it is a foundation of basic human physiology to want to exist and be free and to be able to maximize within the environment for some people.
That's right.
But when people hijack that, then they ignore the history of the country. Then they act like they're more American than you are because they're willing to put it in your face that they don't care about equal protection under the law. I don't think I could do that. I would expect to get my ass kicked if I ever did something like that.
That's exactly correct. They vacated that, and then when they came and then they accepted and then they went with the Southern strategy and all of that kind of stuff, they started moving away from what real conservatism was really all about. Black conservatism kept that in. They vacated that. They left, and then that of course moved away from equal protection underneath the law and kind of vacated really serious conservative principles. But that's kind of another conversation. But yet at the same time, at least get the fundamentals of what conservatism is about. And these guys don't know it, don't understand it, and haven't studied, haven't read it, nothing. And instead of being arguing and screaming at each other and say it's Pookie and Ray Ray and this is what's going on in the community and so on and so forth, and don't really understand what's move your community into a certain area. Don't understand how
I'm so glad. I'm so glad most of the people who talk about community are people who ain't got their shit together. I cannot tell you how happy that makes me. I cannot tell you.
Exactly.
But
and go ahead.
Yeah, but they have to understand that America is an applied science too. It's an applied science.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true. Lawrence guy, you're dead on the money.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, bro. That's what we're talking about right here. You've vacated that. That's the key. That's some of the key principles. Even Barry Goldwater spoke on it, and was militant about it. That's what I'm saying. These guys don't understand this stuff. They don't understand it. Then they want to talk about the community and all of this. What? It's frightening. It's frightening to me. It's frightening. It's frightening. The level of ignorance that these guys have gotten, and the people who are sitting here actually following them, because none of them have looked into this. Now I understand that there are those out there that don't have an interest in studying this and keeping certain culture war aspects going because they want to obfuscate some of the policies and the laws that went on underneath this that came to actually adversely affect your community and actually really go against equal protection underneath the law. By law, they're trying to hide that. I understand why they're trying to do that. These guys, they don't understand.
Yeah, it's just that they want a cooperative society to be built so that way they can run it. But they don't understand that most of the actual job is actually making sure that the stuff works.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, sure. Like, yeah, that is correct. But when you got most of the people who are on that side who don't even give a shit about the public at large, They just walk up to the buffet line like, okay, I like gun rights, and you can have all the rest of that shit. Like, nah, man, that's not how this works. Yeah, and they're more American than everybody else because they say that they are. But
Yes.
yeah, that's just where we are, and it's like it's so easy to do it in that type of format. But you also got to have the correct kind of policies in place that have the right type of benefits and outcomes. Like you can't have people who just walk out of relationships with the entire family and get compensated for that. That's a policy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why you can't speak of any of this without policy. You can't talk about even this what's this hot button thing now, critical race theory. You can't talk about critical race theory without talking about law and policy. You can't talk about it. But that's the problem why I don't get on panels and debate with these people, because not that I'm not going to say that they're beneath me, even though I do feel that way. But the reality is they haven't done any of the basic study fundamentals to sit down and really have an intelligent, somewhat nuanced conversation about this. All right. But besides screaming, acting like a bunch of savages. And I don't respect them. I don't respect their views because it's based on someone else's that they themselves have not studied.
Yep. Very true. And I just wait for people to do it every single time. And it's like, okay, you invalidated your own argument.
I mean, they do it left, right, and center. Left, right, and center. That's all. That's all I see.
They
That's
do
all I
it
see.
up front because it's so easy to do it that way. It's so easy to just make these unsubstantiated claims become a public troll, and you can have more money than you're willing to dream of. Anybody can be a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Lauren Boebert. It doesn't take any type of skill to be that type of person.
Mm-mm. No, no, it doesn't. But when you have to back up what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and you get in there and you talk to a Dr. Ritchie and some of these others who sit down and just systematically break down and deconstruct everything you said with facts, you end up looking crazy. End up looking crazy, filibuster, scream, argue, deflect, butt run, and then kind of take off and look crazy and just look crazy. They can't defend their positions because it's indefensible. I've yet to see so far, literally, any black conservative get on any real panel here and speak from a true conservative perspective. I've not seen it. I haven't seen it yet. Have you?
No, I mean because their idea of conservative is, you know, they come out here and they do their Michael Savage impression or their Rush Limbaugh kind of thing. A whole lot of bluster, no policy, and remember, a radio host got a black RNC member fired from his job.
Yeah,
Think
it's true.
about that. A guy on the radio. But that's what it is, man. It's like, look, if you're not going to discuss the policies, then you're just really not even here for anything.
No, no, you're not. You're not going to deal with it. You're not going to. You're not dealing with that at all. And they come up with, well, defunding the police and this, that, and thing. This is what's causing problems. What? What are you Negroes talking about? I mean, unbelievable. Jose Lawrence guy. Uh, have you have you disappointed me? Hell no. Are you bugging? Nah, man. You need to get on the panel here real quick, man. But anyway, yeah,
No, I mean,
conservatives.
he's probably the only one, out of like maybe five people who I know are conservatives who could talk about this stuff in this space, but I don't know many because because the rest of the guys are kind of in the middle, but they're just really running the culture war game on people who don't understand the issues and won't show enough wherewithal to actually go up there and ask the proper questions so that way they can be permanently fixed from this. But the way
Right.
they decided to be permanently fixed was to permanently go back to the same person for miseducation.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
You
it's
know, you
nuts
that's
how that works.
that's absolutely correct. That's how crazy this is. Crazy. You know, and they call themselves conservatives. I understand the white people playing certain games in this conservative, call themselves conservative space because for them, from a political power perspective, they're trying to maintain their power, literally from a tribal, almost racial perspective. They're looking
Yeah,
at it that way,
I get
and
it.
you know what I'm saying. So I get it. You know, if anyone doesn't, you know, just take a look at Isabel Wilkerson's book, man, Cast. Just read that, like I did. It's got a lot of information in it. Some may agree or disagree, but look at the stuff that's broken down in there, and you see exactly what's going on. But these Negroes here, who have no comprehension of the real conservative platform, none at all, who were former uh, uh, um, how would I say, Hillary Clinton folks and all that just a couple of years ago, now all of a sudden become conservatives, haven't read, studied anything about a true conservative platform, have no understanding, do not understand equal protection underneath the law, don't understand any of this, which is this is fundamental basic stuff. This is not even even that complex. Forget about some of the other key issues that when we talk about from the standpoint of policy, fiscal policy, and so forth. These guys are are adamant pushing a position that really works against them because those who are literally pushing a lot of this narrative under the table are not for you either. They're not
Correct.
trying to play the game with you like that. And these
Let me read
people
this
need
send
to
out super chat. Let me read this. Dick I used to listen to Michael Sadler and Dennis Prager as a teenager. Oof. The problem I realize is how we speak conservatism and not having actual infrastructure to conserve. Yes, like dude, they actually resisted expanding infrastructure to quote unquote conserve the environment the way it is, like a damn snow globe or something, man. Like that's what you have down south. You have a whole bunch of snow globe places that are maintained in posterity of how it was, while everybody suffers in the entire system itself. And those people actually think they're conservative because they're unwilling to invest in the actual environment that they're in. Man, that's crazy.
that is the bottom line. And they want to sit here and say, well, let's keep this going, but yet they don't organize or anything to push forward what they think is going to be good or work for the community. Want you basically to do the work, and then they'll sit there and say, well, let's benefit or let's not, but let's just sit back and look and then criticize, but do nothing. Nothing. But yet call themselves conservatives. But see, once again, you got to get back into the concepts of conservatism and really what that really is all about. And when you look at it from a black community perspective, from a black perspective, it's almost a revolution. It's quite revolutionary, and it's
You would want good schools. You would want good outcomes. You would want good family things. But as a black conservative, you wouldn't want to be hell bent on waiting for this domestic counterpart to come to the table to exercise your conservatism. You're just gonna find somebody else to exercise that conservatism with. You're not waiting for people to come to the table who don't have through culture. It's been drained out of them through a cultural process that they took place in deliberately because there was stuff in it for them. Yeah. So that's kind of where you're at, man.
facts. These are facts. These are facts. Um, but very disturbed at what I'm seeing from these non-black conservatives that call themselves conservatives who are actually something different. These are white, male, racially aggrieved populists who've taken on the white male populist method and call this conservatism, which it's not conservativist principles at all. It's really more so than another thing you want. It's actually anti-you, anti-your community, anti-blackness. That's pretty much a lot of what they're pushing in favor of their own hegemony and their own political and economic power, of which they're not looking to really invite you in on. So there's certain when people say, well, some of it's our fault. We gotta work at it. We have to certainly not only build, so we have the infrastructure involved, but to a large extent, you have to put time. You have to put in work. You have to organize and develop. These are certain things you have to do. These guys are not doing that, and they're not willing to do it, and they're not even thinking about doing it. They'd rather keep this thing here the way it is, And,
that we're in. They're here to build an actual cult of personality around keeping the problems here within place and fighting inappropriately to solve the actual problems and the issues itself. It's kind of like a dual strategy that people have.
Yeah. It is. It actually is, MOT. It actually is. But when we look at the Black community on the whole, we tend to be very conservative. The numbers bear this out. We tend to be very conservative in many respects, with respect to family, with respect to fiscal responsibility, with respect to really work and maintaining your work, and in business, as we are. If you look at the numbers and look at how poorly our banks and so forth are really supported, and how we have survived and done in this society and culture, it's almost amazing. So a lot of that comes from very strong conservative principles. But you try to explain this to these Negroes, and they just don't see it. But yet, most Black people on the whole are working, providing, and doing what they have to do to survive and live in this country. And we're more concerned right now with prevalence, and so much of that is going to be involved with how you organize politically and economically, and that's the battle that many of these guys you hear on this side of the fence talking crazy are not willing to do. You and I talk about this all the time, but it just gets back to that. It just consistently gets back to that. And if you think you're going to grab this Black female and she's the cause of your biggest issues, and you got to really work this out with her and all that, these guys have missed a lot of what's going on, because that's not going to affect a lot of the institutions that you have with respect to your banking institutions, your healthcare, and so forth, your education. That's greatly affecting your real estate and so forth that pays for your education and your schools and so forth. It's not that. It's not. It's not totally related on this Black female. It's how you help to organize your culture. And like you said before, and if this person doesn't want to play ball with you, then hey man,
roll out, man.
Roll on, man. There are others that can take that place. There are others who can take that place. But you're gonna have to get involved, because you're gonna have to get your hands dirty. These guys are not willing to do that. But yet they want to sit here and talk crazy, study nothing. It's frightening.
That's why it's hard to have these conversations with people who are not involved or invested. It's like, well, you look involved. Why don't you catch me up? Like I can't. It's like trying to give your elevator pitch on how to become a surgeon. Like, no, it's not how it works. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, what's going on, man?
What's up, Mike?
Chilling, man.
Like, break it down, baby. Break it down.
I'm actually just coming into the conversation, so I kind of missed the last maybe 2 minutes of it.
Yeah, it's just that overall, you need a couple of things here.
Mm-hmm.
You need a base ground floor for things to work right. That's what equality is supposed to bring. A baseline level to where things operate consistently and properly across the board so that way people can get invested in it. And then you got to have people, after you have the baseline, that's invested in a good outcome. Then you have to find ways of discouraging people from taking advantage of others inside the environment itself and horrifically and overwhelmingly punishing them if they step out of line. Like that's how an actual equal and just society would work. But then some people will come through and say, well, you can't have all that. You must have evil. No, you must not have that. You can have order. You may not have experienced it, but you can have it and benefit from it. But a lot of people don't see it that way because they got to have some type of angle that they need to draw or some type of hustle that they need to pull before they can be able to, quote unquote, make it in society. It always has to come at the expense of somebody else.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with any of that. I think that most people who are claiming, to be these black conservatives don't understand the history of this country, that discrimination and unequal and inequality in this country has costed millions, if not billions of dollars. Just think about Jim Crow. You had to have two bathrooms, two separate bathrooms, two different water fountains, two of everything just to accommodate an unequal society. That was very expensive, and you can only hold it up for so long, despite the fact that the United States had, came out of World War II, pretty much unscathed infrastructure-wise and had a lot of cash coming out of it. It wasn't sustainable to actually run your society that way. And so when we fast forward to 2000 and we're looking at, Citigroup's recent report about racism costing the United States $20 trillion over the last 20 years, you have to ask yourself, how equitable is that, and how sustainable is that? How far can you go with that sort of that level of discrimination and injustice? And so having an unjust society like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you have people who are, not following the process and not taking a side that makes sense for the people that look just like them, then yeah, you're going to have a lot of problems going forward. And you can't get anything actually accomplished with people who think that, I can just culture warrior my way through everything and not look at the overarching perspective of the economics. Now, a lot of these people want to uphold capitalism because that's the attitude of the American society, but don't understand that Black people largely have been kept out of the economic system for the last 100 plus years, even after before Reconstruction and after Reconstruction, they were kept out of it largely. And so all of these institutions like the FHA, Fair Housing Act, and EEOC, and these different institutions were crafted based on the inequality that was installed in the first place by the same very people that they're trying to align themselves with. Now, a lot of times they'll come back and say, well, the Democratic Party is the party of slavery. Well, if we go back to the 1960s, LBJ, kind of fixed all of that. We know that the Southern Democrats switched to the Republican Party, and things have not changed since then. And that Barry Goldwater has been the architect behind a lot of the culture that led up to the Reagan administration. And from the Reagan administration, we can see the new right come out of all of this, and that a lot of people today are trying to align themselves with that. That's kind of the platform that Trump ran off of. And so when you have people who don't understand the history and they don't understand the process, don't respect the process, and don't want to take a side that's actually, commendable, then yeah, you're not really going to be able to have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that a lot of these people are scared and afraid to move on, as you say, because they think that it can't be no Black experience without all this nonsense associated with it. And I'm just telling you, it's better on the other side when you've already left this stuff alone and just done it yourself and just find equals to work with. Because those people have found equals to work with. It's just that they didn't have to work that hard to find equals.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's wrong with having clean drinking water? What's wrong with having fiber optic, infrastructure for high speed internet? In South Korea, they paid $10 for high speed internet. Man, you come here, you're still using, DSL in a lot of your conservative states like West Virginia and Arkansas and some of these places. Yeah. And you're paying up the wazoo for it. You're paying nosebleeding prices for,
60, $70 a month.
Yeah.
For DSL, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, I got a check from AT&T a few months ago for, overcharges on taxation of their services back in 2009. I think I got like $100 check recently for them because of a settlement. Like this is.
I've seen where in the South, some people were complaining that things haven't changed because they don't even in red states, they don't even have paved roads damn near coming up to their homes.
No,
paved roads in the United States of America, in red states. And you talking about infrastructure and DSL and all that stuff that's there like that. You talking about 4, 5G and all what? What? Clean what? What? You don't even have paved roads. Some of these states, in some of these areas, roads are not properly paved. Explain that.
Well, we have the same thing in Boston. Only recently have they paved a good portion of the roads. There were some places, in Boston that did not have paved roads. They had dirt roads, and that's a consequence of the city or the state actually ignoring the infrastructure. A lot of vacant parcels. We still have a lot of vacant parcels that have been vacant since probably maybe the 50s or the 60s. Unoccupied. Now, I'm saying this so that people have an understanding that when you organize for, a common goal, then you're going to get some results out of that. But if all you're going to do is organize to be a culture warrior, nothing good is going to come from that, man.
No, not at all.
You see, there's the whole thing is their culture warrior doesn't make sense because it's not going to achieve anything for you inside of your so-called community that you're concerned about or you're in. It's not going to help you there at all. The others, the people on the other side of the fence, the Mazungas and so forth, their culture war is about covering their tracks on a lot of stuff that they have not done right in the past, that are totally screwed up, that they're not willing to fix. So they have somewhat of a reason for doing what they're doing. It's evil and it's sinister and it's not good. But this Negro is with whatever Stockholm syndrome or whatever it is involved, rolling along with them, doesn't even understand the position that they're even taking. They don't truly understand that position. Now, I know a lot of them are ignorant. They're unread. They don't study history. They don't study any of these things that are going on. They don't study policy, certainly. They don't understand any of this stuff. But they're running out here, pushing the culture war themselves. It's pure madness. I don't know how else to explain it.
Affordable health care.
Black conservatives.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it says it in itself, the Affordable Care Act. What were we paying before that, right? And so
they don't even remember.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a part of the issue, right? Infrastructure from a clinical standpoint would benefit most of your conservative states more than the Democratic states, and so you go to places like West Virginia, you see people with their teeth falling out of their mouth, you see people with respiratory issues, and you're telling me that Obamacare is socialized medicine and we don't need that? Really? How do you expect these people to get to the polls, man, if they can't get any clean drinking water and their asthma pumps, it's costing them $1,000?
That's exactly it, Mike. And look what happened look at that, just healthcare. Look at what happened with us with COVID. Just look there. Your answers are sitting right in front of you. Is there a debate? Is this even a debate? I mean, it's
No.
Oh man, unbelievable.
I think I figured it out. I think they're chasing Stockholm syndrome as the end goal of what they want to do. It's like, okay, how can I invest into the wrong product so that way I can have the right access forever? That's what it is. And it's like, you know, that's how it works. And it's sad, but you at some point you just got to be able to move forward. And like right now, I say talking about the women is the new crack cocaine sale of the era of today. Like you know how heroin and cocaine were, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about this to the point to where you can't even focus on taking a side on simple things in society. It's just nuts.
I mean, you have conservatives like Pat Toomey, who sits on the banking committee, Senate banking committee, who basically lobbied for the banking industry to make sure that your credit scores, Black people's credit scores in particular, would be most impacted, that they can't take things off of their record. Now, how do you measure someone's credit worthiness if there's a pandemic in place and you have all types of social restrictions installed? If they can't go to work and they can't pay their bills and they can't collect their income, how can that be an accurate measure of their credit worthiness? And so that affects people at that 30% bottom that typically should, who are mostly impacted by this. But people who claim to be pro-life and they're so anti-government, well, they leverage the government to actually install these sort of policies in place to hurt people at the bottom, but don't understand why they can't galvanize. They can't understand why they can't galvanize a bigger tent of, Black liberals or Black Democrats to come over to their side of the fence. Why would they come over there if all of your policies actually hurt them?
But you see, Mike, but that's the whole thing about policy. That's the whole thing about organizing. That's the whole thing about, being educated as to what's going on. None of these people are doing any of this. None of that work is being done. That's what I keep saying about these people. They don't do any of this work. So when they sit down, Black people should be deeply ensconced in the Republican Party. But Black people are not stupid. Why are you going to get involved in a party or anything that is certainly not, that doesn't have your best interests? Why would you be involved with that? And then they're putting forth policies and so forth that are trying to really hurt you. A lot of crazy things are going down right now that these guys are not supporting, but they're certainly going after your voting rights. They're certainly keeping you, they're doing all they can to keep you from getting to the polls. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Well, Black people shouldn't be voting. Oh, really?
Yeah, but even conservatives are voting against. But even conservatives are voting against their best interests. That infrastructure bill, allocating $1 billion to West Virginia, $1 billion plus to places like Mississippi. You got bridges that are cut off, ain't being worked on, stalled. Yeah. You got dam systems that need to be updated and whatnot. I mean, there's no excuse, for what they're doing other than having, throwing the football or the basketball into the bleachers and saying, good game. Like, no, we need to get these things done because China is running circles. 40 years ago, Shenzhen was a farming city. Basically, it was just all flat land. Today, it's the most highly technological city on the planet right now. They've seen 40% GDP growth over the last 40 years per year, or 20% per year. The United States has not seen that type of growth since the turn of the 20th century.
Yeah. And
so they did that in the last 40 years. Within our lifetime, they've been able to transform their society from being farmland to being a completely industrialized mecca. And you have people looking at this in the United States, who claim to be conservative, and they're pointing. So we don't want to be like those guys. Are you sure about that? They don't have lead pipes and poor infrastructure, man. The top 3 tech companies on the U.S. stock market right now, outside that are not U.S. based are actually Chinese.
Yeah.
The drone company, DJI, Huawei, the phone company.
But when they've got the labels for you well, either they're communists and they're this and they're this ist and they're that ist, and they have you thinking in that mode, and you can't get out of that mode of thinking, but yet look at things for how they are actually functioning, actually moving. Then they got you. You call China a communist society, but why are they producing more millionaires per capita, as a percentage of people per head, than the United States? How is a communist country, if you are, doing capitalism better than us? Well, how do you explain that?
Well, MOT's been to Germany. Not recently, but he's been to Germany and he's seen what a functional society looks like. It's clean, lack of graffiti, paved roads, BMWs everywhere, Volkswagens everywhere.
Yeah, shit works.
Upskilling of their citizens. If you're a German citizen and you want to go to college is pretty much free. It's a functional society. Try having that conversation in the United States and say, whoa, we don't want all of that. Yeah, but you're losing. You're losing. It's 4th and 30, and you're talking about, man, we're going to run it.
Yeah, man, draw play, man. Should we draw, man? That pocket passer, man.
That's why you don't see all these uprisings in places like Germany, because their society is functional, not just because of they're a authoritarian society. All of their systems are in place for a reason, so that it functions correctly year after year, decade after decade, through political cycle. Here you have white conservatives debating on whether or not CRT should be taught in the schools. What kind of conversation are they really having? When you go to their states like Kentucky, Tennessee, these other places, you see the poverty, coming out of their states. And I'm like, I don't think CRT is a priority for you right now. I think that, you should be really focused on, really laying down, new infrastructure for, for your constituents.
Yeah.
You got McConnell with starving citizens in his state, poor infrastructure, and per capita some of the poorest people in his state, and he's sitting there turning down this infrastructure bill, everything else like that, because these guys are trying to push some kind of culture game going on over here. Yeah. And these people are.
He voted against it, but he still took the money.
Unbelievable.
He voted against it, but he still took the money, though.
Yeah. I mean,
they'll try to grab all the money, but look at how the people, what Mike said before, how these guys vote against their interests. It's anyway. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. Just finish.
Yeah, they vote against their interests. Yeah, they vote against their interests only to stay in office and do nothing. Like, how is that? How is that an agenda that anybody can get down with? Politically. Like, I'm in office and we don't have any clean drinking water or anything like that, man. But at least I'm in office. That's pretty much their claim to fame, that they're in office. Because Washington is such a plush place for them in comparison to their own states, right? If you go to Washington, you're sitting pretty comfy out there. You don't have to worry about clean drinking water and stuff like that. But if you go back to Kentucky or Mississippi or these places, nah, man, you're not trying to live there. Nah, man, you're not trying to live there. So you're gonna do whatever you can to stay in office so that you can live comfortably, but your state's dilapidated.
Yeah, well, you seen that Mississippi brandy that was coming out of the faucet in that damn 4-star hotel.
Oh my God!
I thought that was green tea.
I mean, it's horrifying. I mean, it's horrifying, man. And you look at the Appalachian Mountains and so forth, sitting right up there in Kentucky, in these areas, and you have people who are dying of third world diseases. We're not talking about just black folks. We're not talking about just black folks. We're talking about many, many, many whites up in there living in damn near thatch roof huts and so forth. It's damn near like that. And it's no one saying anything about it. It's all good. It's all good. Terrifying. It's terrifying what's going on. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. But I'll leave the rest to you guys on this. It's beyond me. It's beyond me to comprehend some of what's going on.
All right, man. So I'm about to get up out of here. So you got any last words, Mike?
No, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's come through. You got any last words? Got any last words, Nagon?
Thanks, MOT, for letting me up, man. Thank you.
All right, cool. All right, man. And this is a live stream.
Thanks for letting me up, bro. Thanks.
All right, cool. All right. And this is what I mean by this is the difference. Like, if you're actually working toward an outcome, you don't need a code of personality. But if you're not working toward an outcome, you actually do need one. It's very easy. Everybody's trying to ingratiate themselves around the problems. We don't really need that here. And to be quite honest, the people came here for that. And that's crazy. But you get to make the individual choice not to be on that. And the only way you're going to be able to do that, skills and abilities, and participate in society like you're supposed to. Nobody's going to control you or try to figure out where you're going or anything like that. But the outcomes are, and the results are going to be quite necessary to judge, because there's going to be a lot of people who's doing this stuff right now. Then they're going to turn around and talk about teaming up economically and stuff later on, even though they was doing all this nonsense while everybody else was trying to build their life. You got to let the people go, man. So I want to thank you guys for coming through. I know it's late at night. I'm the man tomorrow. You guys have a really nice night. Peace. Thanks for coming through. Like the video before you leave.